columnar habit. In this training, we're going to prune a plant with a columnar habit. To do that, we've selected this Hellman pillar barberry just outside of one of our residence halls at BYU. At a glance, you'll notice that this particular plant is in pretty decent shape. It's retained its natural habit. A few of the stems have begun to splay out a bit, but again, for the most part, it's in pretty decent shape. At the same time, this plant does have a number of minor issues. It was planted, we're guessing, about 5 to 8 years ago as of the time of the making of this video. As far as we're aware, BYU's grounds department has never pruned this plant. And that said, this plant needs some thinning. Again, a few of the stems have begun to splay out a bit, and even though it's difficult to see from this image, there's a number of dead and rotting stems toward the interior of the plant. That said, to prune this plant, we're going to do a few things. We'll thin out about a third of the older, larger stems to encourage rejuvenation, and we'll remove the dead and wayward stems. On a related note, and like many crimson-colored barberry, Hellman pillar barberry is a plant we consider quote-unquote timeline sensitive. Given enough sunlight and other nutrients, its exposed leaves turn crimson. But as the plant thickens and begins to fill in, the sunlight will struggle to penetrate the canopy and reach the innermost plant material. And any leaves that do not receive sufficient sunlight, etc., will remain green or perhaps even die. As we prune the outermost crimson plant material, chances are it will expose some green plant material. And so if the goal is to have the plant looking crimson in time for an event, then we might want to prune the plant on the earlier side of things so that it has as much time as it needs to look the way we want it to look before the event. Well, that's plenty of information in the way of goals and special considerations to get us started. That said, we'll begin by removing some of the outermost stems. In time, we'll want to remove some of the other stems as well, but because this plant has likely never been thinned, some of the spacing between the stems has become pretty tight. And with the spacing being so tight, it can be difficult to make the cuts we want to make. And so with this first cut, we'll remove this outer stem here and prune it down as close to the ground as we can. What we didn't film is the removal of all the unattached dead material exposed by the stem we've just pruned. Even so, here's the result. We'll use our reciprocal saw and reduce this stem back to this strong lateral here. And again, we'll remove some more of the unattached dead material exposed by the stem we've just pruned. And here's the result. We're going to need some additional help with this next cut. As we work our way inward, we're going to use our reciprocal saw in order to try and get a bit more surgical. But because the spacing between stems is so tight, we're worried about severing stems we don't intend to sever. And so off camera, we've asked a couple of people to help splay out those stems a bit to try and create some additional space. Know that when we finish making the cut, our off-camera help will let go of those stems, and many of the plant's leaves will fall off as a result, which is going to make it look like we've removed more material than we actually have. Even so, here's the removal cut. And again, we'll remove some more of the unattached dead material exposed by the stem we just pruned. And here's the result. We'll remove this stem here and prune it down as close to the ground as we can. And again, we'll remove some more of the unattached dead material exposed by the stem we've just pruned. And here's the result. We'll use our hand clippers to remove these outer stems here. And here. And here's the result. We'll use our reciprocal saw, work our way inward, and remove this stem here. And here's the result. We'll use our hand clippers to remove these stems here. And here. And here's the result. We'll use our reciprocal saw and continue to work inward by removing this stem here. And here's the result. We'll use our loppers to make this next removal cut here, and you'll notice that at this point we're making pretty good progress with our thinning. Things are really starting to open up, and it's getting easier and easier to make these cuts. At any rate, here's the cut, and here's the result. We'll use our hand clippers to remove these stems here, and here, and here's the result. We'll use our reciprocal saw to remove these stems here, 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 and here. And here's the result. And I think that's a good place to stop. To review, you'll remember that when we first got started, this particular plant was in pretty decent shape. A few of the stems had begun to splay out a bit, but it had retained its natural habit. The plant needed some thinning, and there were a number of dead and rotting stems toward the interior of the plant. To help mitigate these issues, we thinned out about a third of the older, larger stems to encourage rejuvenation. We removed the dead and rotting stems, and we removed any wayward stems. This is the end of the columnar habit segment of our training video. Again, we realize that pruning is a combination of art and science, and in many instances there isn't necessarily a right or wrong way to prune as it pertains to how aggressively to prune and which specific stems to remove, but we hope that this training will give you a better idea of how we prune plants with the columnar habit at BYU.